Ve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvisesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Jai Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Hare Krishna. Today we will be discussing Bhagavad Gita as it is, chapter 2, text 17. Avinashi tu tadvidhi yena sarvam idam tatam vinasham abhyayasyasya nakaschit kartumarhati. So Krishna says here, Avinashi means imperishable. So what is imperishable? That spirit soul is imperishable. Tat, that spirit soul is Avinashi. You know that, Vidhi. And what is the quality of that spirit soul apart from being Avinashi? Yena sarvam idam tatam. It spreads throughout this body. Sarvam idam tatam doesn't mean that the soul spreads everywhere in this material universe. There is a difference between the soul and the super soul. The super soul is all pervading. Krishna knows by dint of his expansion of his energy every nook and corner of this creation. But we can only perceive what is within our body. So Sarvam idam tatam refers to the soul spreading throughout our body. So that spirit soul is Avinashi. Know that that is Avinashi, cannot be destroyed, and it is spread throughout the body by its consciousness. And Vinasham, for such a imperishable Avyayasya, Vinasham nakaschit kartum marhati. Nobody is able to do that destruction of that spirit soul. Vinasham nakaschit kartum marhati. So that is the property of this spirit soul. So Krishna here, he explains in one sense, the property of the spirit soul is consciousness. Because only when the spirit soul is in the body, you can feel anything that is happening to the body. Like you're walking on a street and there is a small prick to your feet, and immediately you react, oh, let me take care of, this small pebble or whatever, thorn. But a dead body, you may cut or chop, the dead body doesn't act, doesn't react. Just a few moments ago, the dead body was fully alive, and just after it is dead, why the dead body is not acting? It's because the spirit soul has left, and with the spirit soul also the consciousness has left. So the spirit soul spreads throughout the body by dint of its consciousness. It's very natural to understand, like you are driving in a car, like all of you are drivers, and you know that if somebody slightly from behind comes and kisses the car with their car, you can immediately perceive that your car has been hit, isn't it? So that means because the driver is there in the car, he can perceive everything that is happening to the car, the body of the car. He is aware of everything. Similarly, the soul is there in the region of the heart of the body, and it spreads consciousness everywhere, and it is aware of everything that is happening in the body. And the moment that soul is gone, the body becomes unconscious. You cannot bring the body back to consciousness. But that doesn't mean, so Krishna says, yes, the body dies doesn't mean the soul has died. Vinasham avyayasya. Don't think that you have killed the soul. You might have killed the body, But vinasham na kaschit kartumarhati. Nobody is able to kill that spirit soul. It is eternal, avinashi. It cannot be killed. That means we are conscious entities because of the presence of spirit soul, and the spirit soul never killed. It is moved to a different body. Like, for example, you destroyed the house of a particular person. The person escaped from that house. It doesn't mean that you have killed that person. The person will go and find some other house. So that is what Prabhupada mentions in the purport, the beautiful purport. He says that the influence of such a spiritual spark is spread all over the body as the influence of the active principle of some medicine spreads throughout the body. Sometimes people ask how such a small spirit soul, that measurement is also mentioned, it is measured as 1/10,000th part of the tip of the hair. You take the tip of the hair, that itself is so small, and you divide into 10,000 parts, that each of that part represents the size of the spirit soul. Of course, it is said like this for two reasons. One is the tip of the hair itself is inconceivable, and inside that 10,000 part is even more inconceivable. So that is to show that the spirit soul is inconceivable to our material eyes. At the same time, one should not think that just because it is inconceivable, there is no such entity as spirit soul. There is such entity, and that size is also mentioned, 1/10,000th of the tip of the hair. It cannot be even found by microscopes. One may say, oh, I can figure out even the smallest of microbes or the atoms within our cell from the microscope. That probably is less than 10,000th part of the tip of the hair. No, because firstly, you have to understand what is the tip of the hair. Hairs are of different sizes. So it's just to show that the size of the spirit soul is so small that nothing material can perceive it. But at the same time, you should not come to a conclusion that just because you don't perceive it, it has no existence. It does exist. It is so tiny. And in the spiritual world, you can perceive its form. It manifests a form, in a form to serve Krishna. But when it comes to the material world, it takes the form of this material body, made of these 5 elements, gross elements, and 3 subtle elements. So Prabhupada says the current of the spirit soul is felt all over the body as consciousness. That is the proof of the presence of the soul. So if somebody asks, what is the proof that you have soul? I don't believe that there is soul. The simple question to ask is, how do you explain the difference between a living body and a dead body? Now they may say, okay, it's not because of the spirit soul that you're living, it's because of a particular combination of matter that produces consciousness. It's not because of spirit soul. Well, if that is the case, why don't you produce that consciousness? The same person is lying dead. The same person was active before. He's lying dead now. Why don't you bring that combination of material things and make that person conscious again? If you cannot do that, then you cannot claim that this is what produces consciousness. So we are we are spirit soul. We are not the dead body. And the other thing to note is that without spirit soul, nothing is attractive, isn't it? However beautiful that person is, if the person is now dead, the dead body is lying, nobody is even willing to touch that dead body. What to speak of adore, what to speak of liking. being attracted. Nobody wants to even see or even touch that dead body. Because of this, because the real attractive thing in a person is the spirit soul. Without the spirit soul, your emotions are not shown, your personality is not shown. Every single thing we communicate with the body is because there is spirit soul expressing itself to the body. So even if your most beautiful person is beautiful because of the spirit soul, not actually the body. But unfortunately, people disregard, still, in spite of Bhagavad Gita saying, in spite of logically explaining, people still disbelieve and disregard. Because if they accept the presence of the soul, that means they have to accept God. Why? Because now they have to accept that this whole world is run not by the body. Body is just a dead matter. We are spirit souls. That means there has to be a controller beyond, above us, because soul is something which is not within our jurisdiction of understanding. So that means there is somebody who governs everything else beyond our jurisdiction. So they have to accept God. Bhagavad Gita clearly clarifies there is spirit soul, there is Paramatma who is governing everything. So they have to accept everything else, everything that scriptures say. So here another thing to note is that Prabhupada mentions that the spirit soul is actually making our heart function. It is a well-known thing. You should actually read the purport of this shloka very nicely. Prabhupada explains so many points. So Prabhupada says that, to read out exactly what he says in the purport, the individual's atomic soul is definitely there in the heart along with the super soul, and thus all the energies of bodily movement are emanating from this part of the body. The corpuscles, which carry the oxygen from the lungs, gather energy from the soul. When the soul passes away from this position, activity of the blood generating fusion ceases. Medical science accepts the importance of the red corpuscles, but it cannot ascertain that the source of the energy is the soul. Medical science, however, does admit that the heart is the seat of all energies of the body. So the heart is the seat of all the energies of the body. So soul is making the heart function. Now comes an interesting question. Somebody asked me, Prabhuji, this people, so you are saying that, okay, spirit soul is what making the heart function. That's what is making us alive, displaying consciousness, and so on and so forth. But sometimes, or many times, we see nowadays science has developed, and people are, uh, making people live by doing this CPR treatment when somebody suffers a heart attack, or literally their heartbeat has stopped, and they show in the line, right? It goes flat. That means the heart is not beating. But by doing that, that CPR treatment, they'll resurrect the person and make him alive, and the person has lived for a few more years. So how do you explain? That means that the soul is really not needed. So, well, firstly, we need to understand that the CPR process, it's not that it is guaranteed to make the person come back to life or show the life symptoms. It happens one in probably 100 cases, or maybe 10 in 100 cases, whatever it is. It is not a guarantee. There is no fixed formula that it will work. See, what we have to understand is the spirit soul can occupy the body as long as the body is fit to function, and as long as it has got its duration of destiny. If one of this does not satisfy, the soul comes out of the body. Like, for example, if the soul is supposed to stay in the body for 70 years, after that, you do whatever you can to revive that body doing CPR, the person cannot be brought alive. The duration of life in the body for the soul is done. But if the duration is still there, but for some reason the person, um, because of bad habits or because of some accident, whatever it is the soul has left the body because at that particular point the body became unfit for the uh, sustenance of the soul. But by doing that procedure, the body is made to fit again, and then the soul can occupy the body until the time remaining in that body. So in Bhagavatam also we see there is this science called Mrityunjaya Vidya that is employed, that is known to Shukracharya. So by using that, he brings back to life even Bali Maharaj, as well as all the soldiers in the demon's side. There it is explained that as long as the body was able to be constructed, or the body did not get damaged in a way that it cannot be functioned, it cannot function, he was able to keep the body fit and was able to resurrect their lives back. So it is not that by doing some trick, a dead body also can be made as a live body without the soul. No, the soul has to come and occupy it. Only then you can function. So this is to show that this verse also, what we can take away from this is that you cannot enjoy this body forever. It is going to die, which will come in the next verse, Antavanta ime deha. But the point is that you cannot enjoy this body. This body is not eternal. The soul is eternal. You are actually the soul, not the body. Your enjoyment should be on the platform of the spirit soul. Therefore, Sukadeva Goswami very strongly condemns this effort of maximizing the duration of life. Somebody was saying, one scientist, their methodology is they want to prolong the age of human beings. How they will insert some chips within the body which will detect any anomaly in the blood, any anomaly in the cells, and immediately it will send some neutralizing chemicals or indicate to us outside that this is what is happening, so we can immediately treat it so it won't become a big problem. So in this way, you can potentially elongate your life from 80 years, 90 years, 100 years, maybe to 200 years, even 300, 400 years. But they don't guarantee that you will live eternally, even after so much of effort. Actually, the yogis, there is another method of living for a very long time, which is done by the yogis. Basically, they don't breathe at all. Because it is said that the destiny of your body depends on how many breaths you take. Say there are 1 million breaths given for your life duration. So if you misuse that breaths improperly by ugra karma, then your life duration is cut short. These yogis, what they do, they don't breathe at all. They take long breaths, or they come to a point where the incoming and outgoing breaths are neutralized. And potentially they live for hundreds of years. And one time Prabhupada was in Kumbh Mela. He went along with the devotees. And they were seeing all these yogis all these kinds of babas and walking around with matted hair and all of that, and they're taking bath. And then Prabhupada said, many of these yogis you see, they are many hundreds of years old. And every day they would take bath in 3 holy rivers, or these char dhams. They take a dip in, I think, Haridwar, and then they get up in Puri, and then they get up in Rameshwaram, and then they go to Dwaraka. So when they take a dip through the connection of the river, they come out in another place, and then they take a dip there and come out in another place. So the hair is, the bodies, the hair is all wet, soaking wet. So by dint of their yogic powers, they can do all of that. You can live for a very long time. You don't have to be a gross material scientist to live a long time. The yogis have already achieved this. Like one child was asking his father, tell me a story. And his father is telling him a story. There was a king, and this king had a horse in which he went to fight. And this boy said, "Oh, why did he go in the horse? Why did he not go to fight in the modern vehicles and so on and so forth?" The father said, "No, at that time they didn't have horses. They didn't have these modern weaponry, modern vehicles, and all of that." And then the boy said, "No, but you told me that in Ramayana, Ravana took away Mother Sita in an aeroplane. So they had aeroplane at that time. Why are you saying that they didn't have, advanced vehicles?" And the father becomes quite shocked and surprised at the, logical argument of the son, which is actually true. It's not that the modern science has advanced only now and we are able to live long and live a healthy life and technologically advanced things and all, so on and so forth. But in yesteryears, ancient times, there was technology. In fact, it is a subtle technology. By chanting mantras, they were able to produce weapons. They were able to build planes. Bhagavatam has description of Kardama Muni building a huge plane, unimaginably big, not just a Boeing kind of aeroplane. It is so big, like a city, full of gardens and palaces, servants, and it can traverse throughout the universe without ever needing a fuel. It's not that they didn't have technology, but they didn't misuse it. Using our intellectual power for gross material sense gratification is a suboptimal use of our intelligence. And by doing that, all our energies are going for sense gratificatory things. And people who have even less intelligence, they will grab those and they will live life only for those. Therefore, in those days, the yogis or jnanis or the sages who had that powers, they didn't misuse it. They used it for higher realization. Anyway, the point is that yes, you're able to live for a very long time. The yogis are able to live for a long time. But the body will perish. But what is what is your credit for living for a long time? Even a tree is able to live for thousands of years. So Sukadeva Goswami strongly condemns. Taravaha kim na jivanti, bhastrah kim na shvasantyuta, na khadanti na medanti, kim gramah pasavo pare. So Taravah kim na jivanti, don't these trees live for a very long time? Do you think living for a long time is very meritorious on your part? One may say, oh, the trees, they cannot breathe. We are able to breathe. No, bhastraha, the bellows of a blacksmith, don't they breathe? So what is your credit? No, we are able to eat nice food. We are able to enjoy senses nice apartment. No, na khadanti na medanti kim gramaha pasavo apare. This village animals, don't they eat and mate? So what is your great credit? Oh, live for a long time, or breathe, or eat, or live in a very technologically advanced society. That is not the duty of a spirit soul, particularly a human being. Is meant for a higher purpose. So live the life befitting the eternality of the spirit soul, not the temporary nature of the body. So that is the message of this verse, and that we can live by a life of Krishna consciousness. So I'll stop here. Anyone has any questions or comments, you can unmute yourself. Bhagavad Gita as it is ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Nitai Gaur Premanande, Hari Hari Bol.